foul. That was absolutely ridiculous.
The Boston Bruins have won the Stanley Cup.
Up on down. Here comes a 1-2 pitch. Red Sox win the World Series.
I don't know. It's tough. Tom's up there, man. Beantown.
What's up, Boston Bruins? Boston Bruins.
What is going on, YouTube? It's boy Jess made it here on YouTube and for Beantown Takes. We're back again with another reaction video. We're talking about the Bruins. We got to talk about a different team other than the Celtics on this channel because, again, Boston Sports Channel, we cover all four of the teams. We can't focus on one team out of the four. We got to focus on them all. But we reacted to a video here called "What's Really Wrong with the Boston Bruins?" Grossly underachieving right now, if you were to ask me myself. But they've been very lucky with the fact that the Atlantic Division has not been great this season. Toronto and Florida are the only two teams that are ahead of the Bruins. Somehow the Boston Bruins are third in the division right now. But if you really want to factor it in, Tampa Bay played 14 games and they're a point behind, while the Bruins have played 16 games. Same with Ottawa. They've only played 14 games. Detroit's only played 14 games. And they're all like right there in the mix with the Bruins. So realistically, where the Bruins stand right now in the division is kind of inflated. Like, they really shouldn't even be there because they played 2 more games than a lot of teams in the division. So that's the only reason why they are up there. But right now they have 16 points. The Bruins are 7-2.
That's disgusting.
And I know for a fact one of those overtime losses was in overtime. And you know how I feel about the overtime rule. If you go to overtime and you don't go to a shootout, I feel like you just shouldn't get a point. That should be considered a loss. End of discussion, period. So realistically to me, the Bruins have a losing record right now. They have a losing record. And right now their goal differential is -12. Not good. Not good at all. Are they going to turn it around? I don't know if they'll turn it around or not. Again, this division could be for grabs up in the open. Tampa Bay, even Ottawa, I would say. Like, they actually have like a legit goalie right now. If they can find their groove soon, like, they could be passing the Bruins. The Red Wings are pretty good too. It's a close battle right now in the Atlantic Division. Well, it's the first 3 teams that own the division spot, and then the last one's more like a wild card. But let's face it, if you want to make the playoffs and you're in the Atlantic Division, you got to be a top 3 team in the division. If you're a 4th team, you're probably not going to get there because the Metropolitan Division is looking solid right now. The Devils have 22 points, the Hurricanes have 20, Capitals have 20, Rangers has 19, and the Islanders have 15. So, I mean, if you really want a wildcard spot, I feel like you might not be able to get it because the Metropolitan's playing decent, while as your division is not. So, if you want to make the playoffs and you're in the Atlantic Division, you got to be a top 3 team in the division. Are the Bruins a top 3 team in the division? If you were to ask me, no. That's Florida, Toronto, and Tampa. And then the 4th one, I would probably put Ottawa ahead of you right now, if we're really being honest. I would put Detroit over you right now. Like I've been saying, I don't know how to feel about the Bruins losing Jake DeBrusk. I really don't. I didn't have a good feeling about it. I felt like that took away a lot of their offense, and the same with Heinen. I know he was a 4th liner, but they were guys who were able to make plays, and you lost them, and you replaced them with, like, minimum level talent. That's what you did. We're going to react to what's really wrong with the Boston Bruins. Jimmy Hockey, I will leave his links in the description down below. Leave a thumbs up if you guys enjoy these videos here. Subscribe now if you guys new. You guys know what to do. Go check out the website. The link is in the description down below. Without further ado, let's hop straight into this video.
The Boston Bruins, one of the top point leaders in the NHL over the past decade, and arguably the most consistent franchise of the 21st century.
Yep.
After a record-breaking season in 2022-23, the Bruins navigated a somewhat difficult cap situation, putting together yet another strong season in 2023-24, despite their low expectations. Both of these campaigns ended in disappointment. But this season, with the books opening up a bit, the Bruins re-signed star goalie Jeremy Swayman and brought in strong free agent pieces like Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, improving the biggest needs of this roster through the offseason without losing many assets. Compared to last season, expectations for this team are significantly higher. But for some reason, the team is off to a much slower.
I don't think they're significantly higher. Significantly higher? Nah. If anything, I would say they're the same, maybe a little bit higher. Significantly higher? Like, how? What do you mean by significantly higher? Like, Stanley Cup contenders? No, they're nowhere close to a Stanley Cup contender. I was even saying that at the beginning of the year.
Previous 2 years. Well, today, let's break down what's holding this Boston Bruins team back. Could it be their front office, their coaching, or simply their roster construction? Maybe it's something a little bit deeper.
All right, you want my answer? You want my answer? I think it's the coaching. I like Montgomery, but in the playoffs, his decision-making has been not too great. And he hasn't really gotten his guys... He hasn't gotten the most out of his guys in the postseason yet. He just... No. No. There's no excuse for blowing the 3-1 series leads and everything else like that. There's just no excuse for it. I think it's the coach, but that's just me. But I also do think part of it has to do with the front office management decisions on who to let go, who to sign, or whatever. I think that plays a factor in it also. Like I said, they lost quite a few guys this past offseason that, in my opinion, were key pieces to this Bruins team. And you're missing them. You're missing them. I think DeBrusque's the biggest one you're missing.
If the Bruins are in trouble, or if they can figure things out before the season gets out of hand.
Do I think they can figure it out? Maybe.
And quite frankly, the tremendous expectations and standards that have been set for this organization have not been met. Let's break this down and figure out exactly why the energy in this building and for this hockey club have been down compared to the past few seasons. First, let's talk about what I believe the biggest issue is: consistency. The Bruins have been up and down, performing really well in some periods, but being absent in others. This inconsistency is leading to a lack of confidence and cohesion on the ice, which you typically don't see from a team led by veterans like Brad Marchand and David.
That's always been an issue with them, though. Consistency. That's always been an issue. Always. They've never been a consistently good team. The 1 year in recent history that they kind of were consistently good was the 2022-2023 season, where they broke the points record and they broke the record for the most wins in a single season. And guess what? Did they play consistent in the playoffs? No. No, they choked again. Consistency has always been an issue with this team. That's always been an issue.
Oshinock. The Bruins have always prided themselves off their strong and consistent defense, and even set out to improve this offseason by acquiring Nikita Zadorov, a player who brings a unique offensive and defensive game to this blue line. The Bruins have run roughshod across most teams in the league, but through the past 2 years, their biggest rival in the Florida Panthers have bullied them into reconstructing their once smaller, quicker defense into the heaviest and tallest defense in the league. This, of course, comes with new growing pains. More specifically, things like chemistry, discipline, and overall speed. In their first 8 games, the Bruins defense has given up 29 goals, ranking as one of the worst totals across the league. Their defense seems to impose on teams physically, but technically, they're completely off with their demeanor and timing. A big issue I have noticed is their lack of effort, especially when it comes to chasing pucks deep and protecting the puck from heavy forechecks. Boston's defense, being the largest in the league, should be bodying down forwards and meeting players at the blue line through physicality. Unfortunately, though, their laziness has translated to the team using their sticks over their bodies, which in turn has led to more opposing goals and, more noticeably, more penalties. Consistency is going to be the biggest thing we need to highlight for the Bruins moving forward, especially with their blue line. Right now, the Bruins are lacking talent in their top 6 outside of guys like Lindholm, Pastrnak, and Marchand. The team has a lot of holes in their winger position, and in order to make up for that, their defense needs to play at a high level. It's why the team invested so much money into them this offseason. Now, a big thing that we need to talk about with this defense not only is their consistency, but also their accountability, something that I think they're heavily lacking in through their first 8 games. Now, the reason I'm bringing up accountability is because the Bruins are playing a very uncharacteristic brand of hockey right now. So let's discuss the biggest Achilles heel for this team, which is their penalty minutes. This season, it feels like every game the team is spending more time on the penalty kill than on 5-on-5.
Tell me about it.
Is this a discipline issue, or maybe are players just adapting poorly to the game's flow? Either way, it's as if they're forgetting the fundamentals of staying out of the box, which can often be a death sentence for any NHL team in today's league. The stats don't lie. The Bruins are among the top teams with the most penalties taken in the league currently.
penalty minutes.
That's not just a bad look. It translates to less time with your top scorers on the ice. It shortens offensive chances and increases fatigue. Not to mention, special teams can't win games if they're constantly scrambling to try to get back into them. Right now, at the date of this recording, the Boston Bruins league-wide have taken the most penalties with 52 on the year, and the leader in their clubhouse is surprisingly their newest pickup on defense, Nikita Zadorov. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the Bruins have always been one of the strongest defensive teams since I started watching them. They pride themselves on being a smart, physical team that plays disciplined hockey throughout the entire season, rarely taking penalties, but more importantly, when they do, they kill them off. This year, uncharacteristically, the Bruins sit 14th in the league when it comes to their penalty kill. And when you lead the league in overall penalties and you can't kill them off, this can be devastating to your defensive numbers. The easiest way to lose games in the NHL is through responsibility, or lack thereof. Players make mistakes here or there, it happens, but it's how you improve and grow from your mistakes that defines you as a player.
React.
Something that seems to be lacking in this Bruins locker room is, like I said, accountability, but also responsibility. Something that a lot of fans have now started pointing their finger towards Jim Montgomery over. Believe it or not, the Bruins have one of the youngest rosters in the NHL this year.
Well, okay, hold on.
You as a player. Something that seems to be lacking in this Bruins locker room is, like I said, accountability, but also responsibility. Something that a lot of fans have now started pointing their finger towards Jim Montgomery over.
Hold on. Let this guy cook. Wait a minute. Let him cook. Let him cook! Why'd you guys think I loved Bruce Cassidy? Because he was a player's coach, but at the same time, he had zero shame in calling out a player when they did something wrong. That's why the players didn't like him, is because he wasn't a player's coach. He was too hard on them. They wanted a more player's coach. So they got rid of Bruce Cassidy, and they got Jim Montgomery. They were starting to, feel some sort of way. Because he was a hard coach to play for. What? If you did something wrong, the coach should call you out on it. If you're not practicing to his standards, and you're not on par with where you should be in the season, if you're not getting yourself better, you should sit. Who did Bruce Cassidy do that to a lot? Jake DeBrusk. And the players got annoyed with the fact that Bruce Cassidy was doing his quote-unquote job. So they fired Bruce Cassidy, and they hired Jim Montgomery, who was a more players coach. Who was kind of laid back, chill, relates to the players, not going to get on you too much. It's kind of chill. It's mellow. I'm sorry, but there's expectations here in Boston, and if you're not meeting those expectations, you deserve to get called out for. That's why I think Jim Montgomery is just not the coach for this team here, is because this team needs a coach to get the best out of him. I don't know if Jim Montgomery does that, especially in the playoffs. When it comes time to the playoffs, he definitely doesn't do that. It seems like when the team goes up 3-1 in the series, or they have a lead in the series, they kind of just chill back. They relax. No, it should be when you smell blood in the water, go after them.
Believe it or not, the Bruins have one of the youngest rosters in the NHL this year, but it's not the young guys who are taking all of these penalties. In fact, it's their leaders like Marchand, Pastrnak, and new guys like Zadorov who can't seem to stay out of the box. So far, we've talked about consistency and accountability being the two main reasons for the Bruins not winning games to start the year. When we talk about these two things, the first person who's likely to take the blame for these mistakes is the head coach of an organization, which in this case is Jim Montgomery. Now, you will have a hard time finding a bigger supporter of Montgomery than me. Since he arrived in Boston, he's had the best head coach record league-wide, and his demeanor and overall method of coaching, in my opinion, is top-notch. But with that being said, this slow start can somewhat be attributed to X's and O's, and Montgomery is to blame for that. Whether he's trying to mix up the lines because nothing's working, or screaming at players like Marchand on the bench, publicly getting a lot of attention for it, it seems like the team is not responding to his coaching style at the moment, which can lead to the discussion about him being on the quote-unquote hot seat.
Yep.
Montgomery currently is on the final year of his contract, and after two disappointing postseason runs under his tenure, we could potentially see a hasty firing of this head coach if he can't manage to get this team back on track through the first couple of months.
Hell, I was calling
Again,
him
this
to
is
be
not
fired
something
after
that I'm
he took
advocating
3-1
for.
in that
I'm a big
historic
fan
year.
of Montgomery, and I think that he fits this organization perfectly. But usually the head coach is the first person to go when a team starts to struggle. And for a team like Boston that has a lot of potential this year, they're going to start looking at Montgomery pretty soon if this team can't get back on course. Last thing I want to talk about is this team's forward group, specifically their top six and the lack of production that they see.
Ew. Listen, Marchand needs to be up here. Marchand needs to be up here. Frederick needs to be the second line, and Zacha needs to be the second line center. If you want to move Coyle over here, then I'm not really gonna argue with that. I know he's a center, but like he can play the wing, so like if you want Coyle on the second line and you want him at right wing, I'm not gonna really argue with that. But if it was up to me, Marchand's got to be on this first line. He has to be on this first line. Has to. He has to be on this first line. But I'm going to go back to my stance on the wingers and the forwards on this team. Not as good as last year. Not as good as last year.
Seem to be getting from their best guys. In my opinion, one area the Bruins failed to address this offseason was acquiring a top six winger.
Right.
Right now you are getting a combination of Geeky, who is more of a third line.
Okay, so let me man, this guy's cooking.
Best guys. In my opinion, one area the Bruins failed to address this offseason was acquiring a top six winger.
You let one go. You let one go in Jake DeBrusk. Why? Why? If Jake DeBrusk was still on this team, if DeBrusk was still on this team, you have first line is Marchand, Lindholm, Pasternak. Second line would be DeBrusk, Zacha, and I would probably put Coyle here, yeah. That's a decent top six. Then you got Frederick, Patras, Geeky. Then you have Beecher, Kaslik, and Brazil. Brazil would be right here. Yeah. That's a much better four lines than you got right now.
Top six and the lack of production that
Sorry,
they
it took
seem
me
to
a
be
lot
getting
while
from
to
their
think
best
about it.
guys. In my opinion, one area the Bruins failed to address this offseason was acquiring a top six winger. Right now you are getting a combination of Geeky, who is more of a third line guy, and sometimes players like Patra and Brazeau, who are all just not playing well in that spot. In my mind, based on the way Zadorov is playing, I would have much preferred the Bruins run with Wotherspoon as their sixth guy on defense, since it worked out pretty well last season, in order to be able to re-sign a guy like Jake DeBrusk,
right,
or pick
yes!
up another star winger, maybe like Tarasenko instead. I'm not saying this would have fixed everything, but something needs to change with this top six. Moving players around the lineup just doesn't seem to be the answer at this point. On a side note, a big positive for this Bruins team right now is their fourth line. I shouldn't say it's not good, but it's
okay.
Shout out to those guys. They are water bugs for this lineup and have been big-time difference makers through the start of the season. The only issue is these guys aren't going to play like this when it comes to the postseason, so you need to figure out the issues with your top six if you want to be able to stay competitive through the entire regular season and especially the postseason, because you're going to be looking towards your top six guys to produce come the playoff time, not really your bottom six guys.
Right.
So what's the potential fallout here? If the Bruins can't shake this slow start, repercussions may ripple through the organization. It could lead to frayed relationships between players and coaches, or even the front office looking to make drastic changes to this roster, whether that's in firing their head coaches or moving off of franchise players who fans seem to really adore. Either way, it's not the ideal situation for the team or for the fan base. So hopefully the team can figure out what's going on to start their season and fix that as the season progresses. So what does this all mean moving forward? Well, right now, I'm pretty optimistic about the Bruins, and I think that they can change all of this, but simply they just need to regroup. Pastrnak needs to find his high-end game again. Brad Marchand needs to return to form and bounce back from some of his off-season surgeries and injuries. And Jim Montgomery needs to find his voice again in this locker room and come up with a game plan that works for this team, allowing them to be more responsible and also holding them more accountable for their mistakes. But let me know what you guys think about all of this. Do you think that the Bruins are going to be able to bounce back from the rough start of their season and regroup? Or do you think that this is going to be a long-term problem and that they're going to suffer from this in the end? As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments.
Well, let's put it like this. If the Bruins, they have to make a move soon, though. It's got to be soon. You can't afford to keep going like this. If they go after a top 6 forward now, then the better they'll be in the long run. Because let's put it like this. If you go out and get a top 6 forward now, and at the trade deadline, you're still not figuring it out or whatever, at least you can say, like, hey, we tried. We took a stand at where we're at. We felt like this move would have put us the best situation as possible for this season. And if it doesn't work out, you trade him for picks. And you just call the season a wash. I'd rather them do it now, though. Do this move now instead of waiting for the trade deadline, because if you wait for the trade deadline, you might be too late. So that's going to do it for this video here. Leave a thumbs up if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe now if you guys new. You guys know what to do. Go check out the website. Links in the description down below. Shout out to Jimmy Hockey for the video here. I'll leave his link in the description down below as well. Thank you guys for watching this video here. It's been your boy Jesse, and we'll see ya in the next video. Later, guys.